The bandwidth for this episode of the AR-15 podcast is sponsored by the Firearms Radio Network. FirearmsRadio.tv.
Welcome to episode number 116 of the AR-15 podcast. I'm your host, Reed Snyder, and with me tonight is my co-host, J.W. Ramp. This is the podcast about your favorite black rifle. This show is for you, whether you're building your first AR or you've been building ARs for years. There's something we can all do to take our black rifle to the next level. Well, J.W., how are you tonight?
Oh, I'm doing great. Seems like I've been able to sneak away and shoot just about every weekend here the last month.
Yeah, all that snow, apparently.
Oh, it's not slowing us down at all.
Tonight we have with us a special guest. It's Nathan Scheuth over at Faxon Firearms, and Nathan's going to walk with us through a discussion about Faxon Firearms and all of the innovations that they're bringing to the market, and what Faxon is doing to change the black rifle for the better. But before we get there, we want to remind you that Brownells helps make this show possible. So don't forget that Brownells, with their 100% lifetime satisfaction guarantee, is there for you anytime you have a problem, like when you can't remove the taper pins from your new barrel to slip off the front sight base, and you now have to find a new barrel. We want to remind you that Brownells has started up their Brownells Edge program, and the program provides free standard shipping on all orders, discounts on 2-day and overnight shipping, free return shipping, which really, if you shop there a lot, that's a big bonus. And the special members only offers and discounts. I think Brownells is taking the lead in the firearms industry, and this program itself, I'm sure you are all familiar with one just like it, but it is really a pretty remarkable option for anybody that goes out and shops for AR-15 parts. So we want to remind you that when you shop for your AR-15 parts, do so at Brownells. And you can help the show out by going to Brownells through our affiliate link at ar15podcast.com/parts. So Nathan, how are you tonight?
I'm doing well. How about yourself, Reed?
I'm over here kind of drooling with a little bit of envy at you handling one of the Faxon ARAC uppers, and we've seen a whole lot about the ARAC uppers. We've had a lot of listeners write in and tell us that they want to know more, or berate us for not including you in some of our shows, and so we're real interested to get you on and tell us all about Faxon Firearms and what you guys are about.
Well, thank you. It'd be my pleasure, and to the customers or listeners that have berated Reed, our sincere thanks for getting us on here.
Nathan, why don't we start off with a discussion about the company? So you guys have been around for 35 years, is that right?
That's correct. So while Faxon Firearms is relatively new to the industry, Faxon Machining has been doing precision CNC work for over 35 years. And we're a trusted supplier to a lot of the most demanding customers in the world. When NASA had something that they absolutely needed to work on Mars, they called us. When the deep hole drilling and oil and gas industry needs something that can withstand 100,000 psi, 5,000 feet under the ground, they call us. And another fun one is when the Air Force has a bomb that they absolutely positively must go boom, they call us too.
So, did Faxon get into the work they do in some kind of seizing the moment opportunity, or were they just there and they developed a skill set that drew these industries to them with their reputation?
I'd say it's a little bit of both. The company has been owned for 35 years by the Faxon brothers, Bob and Barry. Bob, who is the primary designer here of the AR-21 that I have right here in front of me. But it's a company that started itself and truly pulled itself up by its bootstraps. Originally started by the two oldest brothers, Barry and one who is no longer with the company through to unfortunate accident. Bob and Barry decided then to team up and to grow the company. And so with their expertise, their charisma, their drive, and their energy, we've gone from being a 2,000 square foot, back of the garage kind of company to the 175,000 square foot company we are today.
Wow, that's a remarkable piece of floor space there.
It's not enough.
So right now, how much of Faxon is the aerospace and precision work, and how much of it is firearms?
So what I would actually tell you is all of the company is aerospace precision work. We take our quality certifications very seriously and apply the same processes and machining to all the products we make, including our firearms. Tolerances, repeatability, shootability, those are all things that are very, very important to us. Now, from an actual size standpoint, we're about 130 dedicated employees at Faxon Machining. The firearm side is now about 20 full-time.
Okay. So that's a pretty good size, a pretty good portion of the company that's being dedicated to that part of the company, right?
It is, and it continues growing. Sorry, go ahead.
No, is this something that you guys think is going to really dominate the bulk of your corporate existence, or do you think you'll always just have your fingers into an array of pies?
I don't know. Here's what I will say, that I hope firearms continues to grow, and the only way I'll accept that is by having lots of very satisfied customers out there. And if we can do that and continue to deliver new products and innovation to the market, I'll be very happy, and whatever size it gets to, that's great.
Well, you talked about machining for some of the most demanding customers. I guess now that you're machining things in the AR side of the world, you've really found some of the most demanding customers. Sounds like you've been on the forums recently, Reed. Yeah, I've seen a few things here and there. So tell me about Bob Faxon, because I think you explained to me that the AR-21, like many great ideas, was a bar-nap conceptual drawing that really brings us what a lot of our listeners have touted as one of the best innovations in the AR world in years. Why don't you tell me that story?
All right. So the genesis story of the ARAC starts with one night drinking beer. That the Discovery Channel's top 10 assault rifles came on, and Bob Faxon, by the end of it, was not happy to hear that the American AR-15 came in second place. And so, taking his machining knowledge and everything and attaching it to a little bit of gumption and know-how, he developed the ARAC-21 concept on the back of a napkin and an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. And we actually still have those things. I'm not kidding. They're framed up in the office. But the general idea was to be able to create a weapon system that combines the best features of the AR-15 and the AK-47, basically the two most venerable platforms on the planet, and then add improvements from there to be able to make it truly a standout new platform, not just an upper receiver for the firearms world.
Would you say that's the way that Bob approaches all of his problem-solving issues?
I'd say it is, and I think a lot of that has to really relate to our motto, which is manufacturing strategic solutions for tactical problems. So what we like to do is, rather than just solve the immediate problem, how do I solve all of the problems at the same time? And that's where we really get the innovation, we get our juices flowing on a creative side, and that's what's allowed us to really create some of the most innovative products in the market. So
kind of a holistic approach to making the solution. Big picture, 35,000-foot view.
Very much so. I mean, most anybody can make a gun go bang. How do I make it more ergonomic? How do I make it more usable, modular? How do I solve the problems that are actually facing the modern shooter and warfighter?
So, tell me about Bob's origin story himself. How does he come to head a company like this? Was he the kid that took apart the toaster and put it together better than he left it, or what's
the
Bob's
first few
story?
toasters didn't make it. Bob and Barry's combined story is one of true, forgive me for getting a little sappy here, family love and dedication. Taking an idea, which was Faxon machining, and then putting in the sweat, tears, and time to turn it into the success it is today. And, you know, it may sound like I'm lauding Bob, and I absolutely am. He's a wonderful man to work for and a very creative man who drives the company on a daily basis to always be better.
So is Bob still involved on a daily basis in everything you do? I would imagine after 35 years of hard work and developing a company to the size that it is, that either you're going to, you know, die at the wheel and go down with the ship, or you're going to step back and let yourself have some opportunities in other areas. Is he still deeply involved in everything that goes on, or does he try to go out and enjoy some of the fruits of his labors these days?
So Bob has two passions, guns and bombs. He gets to live and breathe them every day.
I take it that means that he's going to not be letting loose of any of the things that he does there, huh?
I don't expect him to, no.
Well, so what's Bob's background? What is his expertise as far as the company goes and as far as the things he's done with the company?
So Bob is, as I would describe him, an avid amateur firearms enthusiast. He's really good at turning money into noise if you give him 1,000 rounds in 20 minutes at the range. He's a shooter, but I would not describe him as a good one, and I'm going to catch flack for that tomorrow. But the important thing is that he recognizes problems, and the way his mind works and the way the company works is, how do we solve that on a higher level? So, you know, rather than most people would say, I need an ambidextrous charging handle on an AR-15. Okay, so you get the Raptor. It's a great solution, but it's not a permanent one. You didn't actually solve the fundamental problem of the charging handle on an AR. So that's kind of our thinking, and that's what everything that went into the ARAC and what led to its current form today.
Okay. Well, so the company at this point, is this going to be something that really incorporates the firearms industry into everything it does? Are you going to continue to try to spread yourself into that space and innovate and develop new products for the AR side?
Absolutely. For us, it is every day is innovation. And I'm not saying it as a tagline. We live and breathe it. You know, with 2 engineers, a couple machines, and an idea, you can turn something on a piece of paper into an evolution in a matter of weeks. And we're definitely known to do that on a regular basis.
So, as far as the rest of the industry, you guys have any thoughts or ideas about spreading your feet into pistols, shotguns, precision long-range systems, any of the other holy grails of the industry we have?
Ooh, oh, but that would be spilling the beans before we get to plan them. So,
all right, we'll just keep that on. Go ahead.
Here's what I'll say to that. Yes, we want to have a positive, innovative impact in every area of the industry, but we're also not the size of Smith & Wesson. yet. And so we're going to take our time. We're going to grow right by having a solid customer base. And in another 10, 15 years, I think you're going to be asking the question of what haven't we touched?
Well, those are pretty big words. I think we'll be watching closely to see how you guys make that progression.
Thank you. I'm confident we'll get there.
Well, tell me, you're holding the ARAC-21. Can you kind of go through and tell us what makes the ARAC-21 what it is?
Yeah, I mean, from the name itself, I'm kind of expecting there to be some combination between AR and AK. Is that a little too obvious, or am I kind of catching your drift?
Well, I think you caught the drift just fine.
All right.
No, you both are very much right. We call it the ARAC because we want to honor the two platforms that inspired it. And so it truly is a self-contained, long-stroke, gas piston upper receiver that fits on an AR-15 lower. But what we don't want things to get lost in the sauce is this is not just an AR upper receiver. This is fundamentally a different platform than what an AR enthusiast is used to. And a lot of that has to go down to a lot of the technical details on the inside of the gun, an adjustable gas system, the actual dual recoil spring assembly. But probably the most interesting thing that people catch when they pay attention to the platform is that this is not a free-floated barrel system. This is actually a clamped barrel system in 2 points. And what most AR people and what conventional wisdom will say is that thou shalt free float a barrel for maximum accuracy. Quite frankly, that's bullshit. What you need to be able to do from a technical standpoint is be able to provide equal force around the outside of the barrel. And if you do that, you still keep the same harmonics down the barrel, or even harmonics, not necessarily the same. So our barrels for the AR-15, which consistently shoot sub-minute of angle, these barrels, which we also make for our ARACs, do the exact same thing. And what that allows you to do, especially when we start talking about small arms, is that these things are beat to snot. Reed, back when you were in the Corps, when I was, I don't think we ever treated an M16 with kid gloves.
No. No.
I can distinctly remember bending a front sight post by sitting on it one time. I guess I was a big Marine. But what the design does and what it allows you to do is the barrel and the receiver reinforce one another during the operation of this gun. So if you take, say, an AR-15, it's an 18-inch 20 barrel, and you smack it against a tree holding the flash hider like a baseball bat, I'm going to guess most AR guys listening to this podcast just recoiled in horror at the thought. A free float is a cantilever design. You just took 18 inches of torque and you just smacked the living bejesus out of it with a thin part of aluminum. Your gun's going to break. That's the fact of the matter. And to us, that's not the best battle rifle that a small arms system can be. In our case, VSO, Vigilant Spectre Operations, took our gun like a baseball bat and just started banging it away against a tree. I've still got the gun. It kind of broke a little bit of bark, but it still continued to function. And that's what's most important to us.
Now, inside of it, what's going on? What makes this different than like one of those HK416 piston guns?
All right, so I will try and take this one apart here in front of me. Now, this is my little fun personal build gun that I put together a while ago. But it is a self-contained upper receiver, meaning nothing extends out the back when you charge it. So you notice I'm charging it, there's no bolt coming out the rear here.
Okay.
So what we're actually doing is using the AR-15 lower receiver basically as the stock receptacle. But that allows us to use folding stocks, allows us to use no stock at all, depending on how you want to put together the firearm. Combine that with steel-on-steel contact for rails, you have no carrier tilt, you have no issues attached with the cyclic rate truly damaging the firearm with the way we have it supported. And then when you start going on to the bolt face itself, is we use an involute profile. So the actual bolt lugs are not square. Square is a very, very bad thing to do in machining because it creates stresses on the corners. So the entire bolt is an involute. It's a wave going around the bolt. And so what that does is it allows the bolt to be able to reinforce itself. You add dual ejector pins to give it a little extra oomph to get brass out of there. You have a world-class, reliable firearm.
So this is a long stroke, right? So you've got a long piston, and you're bleeding gas off at your gas port in the very front of your gas system, or do you have gas coming back further into the rifle with a shortened piston? Tell me about how this whole piston part of it works.
Okay, so I guess I'll work on taking this gun apart here again. It is truly a long stroke gas piston operation. So you direct gases at your gas port through an adjustable regulator, which we use 3 different hole sizes plus a complete cutoff for somebody wanting to shoot quiet suppressed, or who just is looking for maximum accuracy. But this is your actual bolt carrier group, and as you can see, this looks very similar to an AK-47. Now, ignore the Swiss cheesing of this. We were having some fun with lightweight experiments. But you can see it's fundamentally, in terms of how the bolt is shaped and how it rides on rails, it's an AK-47. But if you look across the top here, hopefully you guys can see, you have a cam structure that's almost identical, or that is identical to an AR-15.
Right.
So you combine the operating features of both platforms into one.
Now you said there was a... sorry, JW, go ahead.
So beyond maybe like a firing pin or something like that, this is a completely different set of parts from a standard AR.
That's correct. So hopefully you guys can see on the camera the involute profile here. Notice that those are rounded.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So we went through, our overall objective when we originally designed this rifle was, let's reuse as many parts as we can. Well, that ultimately didn't work out too well because none of the parts met the objectives that we had for the firearm. We said we must use AR barrels. Well, that's a problem because the extension doesn't have the support that we need it to. So we created an all-steel trunnion design, very similar to an AK, and again, adding some different refinements, to be able to reinforce the chamber and to be able to handle the cycling of a firearm with a high cyclic rate. Somebody thought, okay, well, let's use the AR bolt. Then we saw the square lugs plus the gas range, which add a lot of resistance to the system. And we said, no, that's not going to work. And, we went systematically down the firearm, said, okay, well, let's take an AR's charging handle. Nope, that's got some structural weaknesses attached to it. We want forward and non-reciprocating. And so, we made fundamental design choices as we went along with this firearm, and basically we came out with something new. We threw everything out the window. We said we're not going to be constrained by existing parts, and voila, we're done. So ultimately, the only things that are in common with either of the two firings or the platforms is we use an AR-15 firing pin, and we use an AR-15 extractor spring. That's it. Everything else is unique to the gun.
When you're talking about the non-reciprocating charging handle, is it something that you reach up forward and grab towards the front of the rail, or is it kind of right under the scope? What's the manipulation feel like?
Okay, so the general idea is to be able to put the charging handle in an ergonomically sound position. So if you can see this here, it's sticking out by my finger. The charging handle is actually relatively far forward on the firearm, probably about 6 inches farther forward than a SCAR, which would be the other kind of forward charging handle system out there. And the general idea is that when you are firing, your hand is out here grabbing the gun. Why do you need to go back and search for a charging handle when you can just use a gross motor skill, line your hand up with a rail, and rack the gun to the rear? And at that point, the charging handle returns to its original position, again, from an ergonomic standpoint. You're always going to find it at the exact same place. You're not hunting for it in the middle of the dark. You always know with muscle memory, it's going to be right there. I know where to grab it, I know how to use it, and away you go.
But if your hand's right there, it's not going to be slapping you, surprising you, because it's non-reciprocating.
That is correct.
Great.
So
Yeah, it's
on
folding
your,
too, so if you want it.
If you want to
Go
fold it
ahead.
down, it'll get real low profile there.
Precisely. So you can see the handle here, and I'll fold it down and out of the way. And so, I mean, in a normal day's worth of shooting, you're never going to actually manipulate your charging handle. You're going to always be reloading and shooting. So why have a charging handle that could get stuck in your gear that could cause issues when in a typical combat operation, all you're doing is reloading magazines and going?
What's a typical barrel length that you sell those with?
We offer them in 3 barrel lengths, 12.5 inches, and that's the shortest we can go because you start talking about dwell time for a piston system. We do 16 inches for those who are required to have legal length, and we also do 20 inches for accuracy and for hunting.
The rails, are they all the same, or do they scale along with the barrels?
The rails are all the same. So the receiver will always be identical ARAC to ARAC. And all you're doing is changing what we call BAU, the barrel assembly unit.
Tell me about the ability to swap barrels in your uppers. Have you distilled that into a much simpler form than you find in your standard AR?
Absolutely. So the AR typically will require you to take off basically your forend and then be able to put the gun into a vise and to be able to twist the extension off, which has to be timed appropriately with a gas tube, etc. Holy God, Zooks, that's a lot of work, and it's only done at the armorer level. Now, when we created this, our original intent was, yes, we want somebody to be able to swap barrels, but I also don't want it to be toolless because I don't want it to happen accidentally. I don't want it to be disengaged. So what we actually have, if you can see here, is 6 captive Allen keys that are on the bottom of this lower forearm. What you do is you unscrew each one of those with provided tools, which again, just an Allen key. You pop your lower forearm off, and you could actually remove the barrel and insert a new one. And you do it just that easy, and then put it back together, and away you go.
Do you have any issues with the gear attached to the lower rail? We have to strip that lower rail in order to get access to all of the bolts?
Yes, if you are putting something on your lower rail that interferes with the bolts, you have to.
And as far as that interchange, it just basically is locked into place by the bottom half of the forend resting home and being seated properly?
Correct. So you actually, when we machine this, we actually set it up so that the forearm does not seat completely. There's about a 5,000th gap there. And so what ends up happening is when you screw that forearm on, as it's squeezing the upper receiver and the lower forearm together. And we put steel for the barrels in both the rear and the front that it then clamps against, which is what provides the force that holds the barrels in place, and also the mechanism that allows the barrel and the receiver to reinforce one another.
Okay. And that seems like a remarkably simple way of swapping that out. Was that hard to arrive at from an engineering machining perspective, or did it just kind of flow from the natural transition to this new upper?
So I think that a lot of it boils down to us being machinists first before we're gun guys. So we didn't believe any of the typical conventional wisdom. You must free float. You must do this. We said, okay, here's a problem. How do I solve it? And how do I solve it mechanically simply? And this was the solution. So it's not, I wouldn't say, any necessarily remarkable thinking. It's just being able to cast off convention and being able to think freely to the most ergonomic and practical solution.
Now, I've got to tell you, having listened to people argue over what torque spec to apply to a barrel so that you don't destroy harmonics on that free-floating arrangement that you've been talking about, it just staggers me that what you essentially have is a barrel that kind of sits in its resting place and is clamped by the lower end of the forearm. That's amazing.
That's
So
correct. And so go ahead.
does the whole barrel assembly, it pulls out with its constituent gas component, right? That's not something that stays in the forend, right?
That is correct. So it would come out with the trunnion, or as AR-15 guys call it, the extension. The gas block, the gas tube, and the adjuster are all one component.
So if you were going to go from the 5.56 to a 300 blackout, you're going to keep the same bolt regardless of which barrel you use?
That's correct. And the only other piece that you would change for 300 blackout would be a lighter recoil spring, which is just required because of the lower operating pressures at the gas ports of the caliber.
So functionally, are you going to ever see any differentials in the wear pattern from one or the other of the interchangeable barrels, depending on how often you shoot it? I mean, can you shoot up your bolt in the 5.56 barrel so that when you swap it out to the 300 barrel, you've lost some of your tolerance tightness, or is it really a non-starter? Is that not an issue because of the design?
So a combination of both. What we do from a fundamental standpoint inside the firearm is all of the steel components are the exact same steel. And they're all finished the exact same way, which is the QPQ, black nitride, or melanite, isonite, pick your term for the process. But the gaseous nitrocarburization. And so what that does is everything, one, is slicker than goose crap, and two, it means that the wear is spread evenly across the entire system where there is wear. And what I will contend with you is that generally speaking, there is not. Now, repeated bolt thrust on a bolt will eventually cause you to want to replace it. Yes, you're going to want to check your head spacing. But because we control everything for the firearm, very similar to how Apple controls its market, is you're now guaranteed interoperability of everything. So I headspace my bolts to the exact same headspace gauge that I headspace my barrels to. So whether you buy a barrel 10 years from now or one, 2 years ago, they're all going to work together with one another.
Okay. So tell me, if you were to switch over to the 7.62, what fundamental changes do you have to make in order to get that caliber shooting in the AR-21?
Very good question. So the first thing that we'll tell people is we use AR-style magazines, and I'm going to say that proudly. Most other AR companies, not to put words in their mouth, but kind of, look at the floor and I'm sorry, we use those. The problem is not the magazine in the 7.62x39 system. It's not. The problem is how the round is presented and fed inside the system. The AR is designed for 5.56, which generally speaking is a very small round, especially when you start talking about the case. Therefore, the round is presented very high in the magazine. Note that the difference from the top of your retention lips to the front of the magazine, you're only talking about 1/4 of an inch, if that. So what that means is you're always going to have rounds that are presented in the exact same spot in the exact same way, which is wonderful for the general design of an AR, which is 100% inline functionality. So the weakness there is the feed ramps on an AR are cut specifically for the 5.56. It does not take into account other calibers as part of its base design. And so what you really want to do to be able to get the weapon system to function reliably is you just want to take your feed ramps down. It's a generally very simple solution. But when you talk about what ends up happening in terms of, everyone will say, oh, the magazine was the problem. Because the bolt will come forward, it will push the round out, and the round will actually smack against the bottom of the upper receiver, and because it's not deflected into the chamber, you just get a classic jam. All right, it's done. Your weapon system has gone down, and the only way to solve it is to strip the magazine, reset the rounds in the magazine, and then go back to shooting. With ours, if that bullet tip crests the lip of the magazine, it's getting redirected up into the chamber, and it's going to chamber. Period. So the whole idea is being able to reliably feed from 7.62 by 3.9 magazines, which seat the bullet lower. And the other component that people will say is, you must use AK magazines because they're more reliable. Our response to that is, how much more reliable than 100% do you want? Now I'll let that sink in a minute. If I can feed reliably from this magazine, and the magazines have solved all the problems that plagued them 15 years ago, what makes this a bad choice?
Right.
And from there, you also get, your bolt hold open and drop free functionality, which for us, you must have in a battle rifle. You must be able to manipulate the weapon quickly under stress. And rocking a magazine out, rocking it back in, and having to charge the weapon system is not a fast way to reload, when you can do it just as reliably with a bolt hold open system. To us, it's a simple decision. So we purposefully chose not to use an AK magazine.
Okay, so you're using the standard AR magazines. What's the next consideration in a caliber swap to the 7.62?
All right, so the last component that you really want to talk about is the bolt and the firing pin. So a standard AR-15, to function with the caliber, what they'll do is what's called a co-bore. Basically, you're just making the bolt face bigger, but you're not changing the fundamental design of the lugs. And the problem is, and AR guys will, if we hop on forums today, they'll argue with me to death over this, is the steel in the AR-15 bolt is perfectly set for the 5.56, and it sucks for all other calibers, especially when you start making the bolt face bigger. 6.8 Grendel, 6.5 Grendel, 6.8 SPC, 7.62 by 3.9. You're basically weakening the bolt every time you change that and open the face up. So what we did is we said, you know what? We control the trunnion, and again, an advantage of not using AR parts, we can also control the bolt. So the bolt itself got bigger, in the same way that you look at the CMMG Mutant, is they just said, okay, we're going to use an AR-10 bolt. All right, we said, well, you don't need anything that big. How about something that still fits into an intermediate-sized rifle? And so that's what allowed us to increase the size of the bolt, which gives us additional resistance to bolt thrust and gives us incredible longevity to the bolt in that system with that caliber. The last component is reliable ignition of the primer. All right, 7.62 by 3.9, especially some Wolf and Tula, is notoriously hard. And even with quote-unquote enhanced firing pins, you still can't get ignition. And the real problem with the enhanced firing pins is it's a standard AR firing pin that just penetrates deeper. So the overall idea is, what you're actually trying to do with a firing pin is displace primer material to cause the chemical reaction to cause the explosion. All right. So what you actually want to do, and this is something that MGI has done before, so my props to that company, is they made the firing pin tip bigger. So basically you took an AR-10 firing pin tip, you model it to the same size as the AK-47, the same depth as the AK-47, and voila, you have AK-47 reliability and ignition. So it is a significant change from the standard AR-15 in terms of how it operates.
So in terms of a caliber conversion, without messing with any other parts of the rifle, you essentially have to put in a new barrel with its constituent trunnion and then a new bolt and a new firing pin. And you've made the conversion to a whole new non-traditional caliber.
That's correct.
That's pretty amazing. So you solved all of the problems that everybody has in an AR conversion to 7.62.
You add the forward charging handle, so you're not trying to rack a system like an AK, which I think people just look goofy trying to do. Yes, I think we've gone a long way to solving a lot of the problems in that small arms caliber.
So have I touched on all the calibers that the AR-21 is capable of today?
You have. So to just be clear to everyone, we have 5.56 NATO chambering, 300 black, and 7.62 by 3.9. The next caliber up is 6.5 Grendel because it shares the same bolt face as the 7.62 by 3.9, so it makes it another just very simple caliber. One of the big things for us is we always want the bolt faces to be unique. Specifically, you can't take a 7.62 by 3.9 bolt, throw it into a 5.56 barrel, and try to get it to chamber. It just will not do it. And vice versa with the 5.56 and 300 black into the 7.62 by 3.9 trunnion. So for us, the engineering effort is not just, okay, let me open up the bolt face or shrink it, and away you go. There's a fundamental safety aspect that comes to our minds because we want to make sure that the shooter can't accidentally hurt themselves. So we want to try and make the gun marine-proof.
So was that a big part of your consideration? I mean, because, you know, frankly, I have a 300 blackout, I have the 5.56, and I am a little concerned that I might accidentally throw a 300 blackout in a 5.56 rifle or vice versa and end up getting myself in a pickle. Now, I haven't actually monkeyed with it to see which one is possible and which one isn't, so yeah, probably that's, kudos to me for not being like I was when I was younger. But so does that kind of consideration go to the top of the list when you're talking about a system that is so capable of caliber conversions? Or is
Absolutely.
that an afterthought?
No, that is first a big thought for us because in the development process, guess what we did? We chambered 300 black into a 5.56 twice. and for us, because the ARAC has a steel trunnion, an enclosed receiver, the worst it did was blow the magazine out, damage the bolt, and scared the living piss out of us. But the gun survived, the shooter survived, and that's what's important to us. But we figured, since we're idiots and we're the ones designing the gun, and I mean idiot in the nicest sense, we tried to do then things that would be able to help somebody differentiate between their calibers. So on the barrels, although you can't see it on this one, this is a 5.56 barrel. On a 300 black, we actually do 3 proud rings that are very obvious, very easy to see, trying to tell you, hey, knucklehead, you have a 300 black barrel in your gun right now. On the 7.62 by 3.9, it's one big arse ring, thinking, oh, it's 300, it's a big arse caliber. Hey, knucklehead, you have this barrel in your gun. And then combine that with on our website, if you guys can see our magazine marker bands. It's an innovative little solution.
But yes, we tracked those as soon as they came out. Very interesting.
And it all boils down to, for us, it's safety is paramount. And so what we actually do with our guns, and forgive me, I don't have this one set up for it, is you actually will put a matching marker band on the gun, right here around the trunnion typically, and one in your magazine. So that when you put it up to your face, you go, aha, blue and blue. I'm good to go. Red on red, I'm good to go. Oh, wait, blue on yellow. I've screwed something up. I probably shouldn't pull this friggin' trigger. And it's not like the gun will... Sorry, go ahead.
Tell me, when you guys have attached suppressors, do you have any issues? I mean, I've encountered them on the end of ARs, and of course, in that architecture, you have issues of some concerns with the gas, some concerns with, like in the 300 blackout, what light gas system you're going to use. Have you run into the same traditional problems with suppressors? Are they resolved because of your adjustable gas system? Is there something unique in your system that is problematic that we don't see in the AR side of things?
So, yes. We The beauty of a gas piston system, especially when it's not direct impingement, is it's very easy to change the gas port size to run the firearm. Now, we approached it a couple of ways. One, we put on the adjustable gas system. So when you put on a suppressor, click it to a lower gas setting and away you go. Second off, we also are long stroke gas pistons. So all of the gas stays underneath the handguard during the firing process. So unlike an AR where you have a nice big poof going out the right side of your receiver, it's all staying forward in ours. And then second, if you run a really hot load or something along those lines, we actually then have dual ejector pin springs. So one is none, two is one, being the general mantra there, is putting two really stupid strong ejector pin springs into the gun to get brass out of there. What you're able to do is, one, you're able to slow it down, and two, you're able to account for if you accidentally leave it hotter. Now on the 300 black, this is where a fixed gas piston system can show its weakness, and we're very happy to talk about it. Typically what you'll see on an AR-15 is, originally AAC said, hey, by the way, this cartridge is designed for a carbine length gas system. It didn't work out that way. It was because commercial loadings, especially subsonic ones, burn all of their powder in basically the first 4.5–5 inches of barrel. So you run into a fundamental problem where you don't have enough pressure at the gas port to be able to function the firearm itself. So what we did is said, okay, I'm not going to use the same recoil spring. That's dumb, especially when it's really easy for me to field strip this gun. We put in a lighter recoil spring, so it doesn't take as much effort to reciprocate the action versus an AR-15. The second thing we do is you're able to capture a significant amount of those gases between your gas tube and piston relationship. The piston and the gas tube in our 300 black, when you put that on there, is really tight. You're typically talking about 1 thou to 1.5 thou of clearance, period. So almost nothing's getting by it. You're trying to capture everything you possibly can. So you're able to account for the functionality of the firearm. And I will say this very loudly, whoever's shooting subsonic 300 black without a suppressor, ugh, I don't get it. But okay, to each your own. But a suppressor in a 300 black will then help improve functionality, whereas an AR, it tries to overdrive the gun. So you're able to balance both of them with the system.
Okay. You mentioned something that I guess was spurred a thought. You talked about the steel in your barrel when you fed that 300 round, 300 blackout in the 5.56 chamber. So, we hear the debate about the 223 versus 5.56. Is yours a true 5.56 chamber?
Yes, it is. And we do it. Sorry, go ahead.
You talk about the accuracy. Do you see any diminution of accuracy because you're using that 5.56 chamber? Is there any differential when you're loading either round into the chamber?
So, yes, we do see some differences in accuracy, but you're talking about going from 3/4 of a minute of angle to a minute of angle. So you're not talking about much. The fundamental differences between the two, as I'm sure you are very well aware, is the lead. How much does the bullet jump before it engages the rifling, and the positioning of the bullet in the round, etc. 5.56, putting a 5.56 bullet into a 5.56 chamber, the bullet doesn't jump very much before it engages the rifling, and so we actually get very good accuracy out of good old-fashioned 55 grain XM193, out of 62 grain M855, which that's another story.
Don't say that.
I'm sorry, we shoot 1.5 minutes with it at 100 yards. Mr. Guns and Gear had one of our AR-15 barrels with it. 1-in-8 twist is wonderful for that. When you put in 223 plinking rounds, your groups will open up just a little bit. And again, we'll start talking about the lead. So the bullet jumps, it does a little bit of waving, diving, etc. But using a match round, no. We don't see significant changes with match ammunition. But there's also a much higher quality bullet involved in that.
So would you say that your steel would not have a critical failure if you were chambered the other way around and you were feeding hotter NATO rounds? I mean, because realistically, this is the debate, and I contend that there's a lot more to the issue than just which caliber is in there. But I think that if the worst you guys had is a magazine blowout of a rifle when you fed a 300 blackout round in the wrong chamber, that must say something about the engineering in your upper.
So we have fundamentally more metal and steel around the chamber than an AR-15. We do. And the other portion of that design is by not using direct impingement, you're able to do all sorts of fun things in terms of structural reinforcement of the action. So we have a very thick receiver. It is heavier than an AR-15. It's 5.5 pounds with a medium barrel. It's 5.2 pounds with a pencil barrel. But, when I say we blew out a magazine, what we have actually done testing-wise is see where is the limit of our chambers. We took proof rounds. So, the red on the back, I think 75,000 PSI or something like that, proof rounds. We shaved our bolt down to 1 lug. By the way, we started with 8. It got all the way down to 1 lug, and the gun still cycles. And it cycles reliably. Now, it's got a little bit of indentation on the back of that lug from bolt thrust, but the gun keeps shooting. It took us doing a worst-case scenario, taking pistol powder, putting it into a 300 black round, forcing it into battery, which, by the way, took like 15 tries of trying to smack the bolt carrier into it to finally get the gun to blow up. And when it blew up, all it did was bow the receiver out a little bit, but it was able. Here's the real kicker: it extruded a 300 caliber bullet into a 5.56 barrel and maintained pressure long enough and safe enough to clear the bullet out of the barrel.
So is that like redneck swaging?
Yeah, sure. I guess it would work. We found the bullet was about 3 inches long by the time we were done. But
Nice.
That's truly what the weapon system is capable of handling. And I have no problem if somebody just took a full round of proof loads and shot it full auto through the gun. Go right ahead. Have fun. We designed it to be able to handle that.
Well, so I guess that does beg the next question. The possibility of putting an AR-21 upper on an NFA stamped full auto lower, no issues, no compatibility concerns. You've obviously got a different bolt.
Yes, we do. Matter of fact, that's part of the reason I said yes and no attached to it, is the bolt itself is self-contained. An AR-15 requires that tail of the bolt carrier group to be able to engage with a full auto sear. We offer only to those who have an 07 FFL or can show us they have a tax stamp the full auto bolt carrier group. We do not typically sell them to general civilians, and it's not because we don't respect your Second Amendment rights. We do. Matter of fact, it's why I sell them to somebody who has a full auto lower receiver. The reason being is that it detracts from one of the central core features of the AR-21 upper receiver, in that it's self-contained. As soon as you put that tail on the back of the bolt carrier, you are required to then use a buffer tube, and it kills me to do that. So what we want people to be able to fold a stock, to be able to just put a buffer tube cover on it and call it a day and use it as a handgun. You go right ahead. That's our objective as the weapons designer and the seller. So only those who truly have a need for a full auto bolt carrier group do we give it to.
Well, let me ask you that next question then. So you have the NFA stamp. You've sold them the bolt carrier. Do they have to have the buffer and the spring in there? Because you've obviously addressed those issues in the design of your upper.
Nope, leave it empty.
Okay.
Or fill it with Skittles.
Yeah, but that mashes.
That's going to make a real... Yes. Taste the rainbow, indeed.
nobody likes mashed Skittles anyways. So, what have you not told us about the AR-21 upper that we just aren't smart enough to ask about?
I think we've covered so much, but the latest feature that we've introduced is the ambidextrous ejection window. So hopefully you guys who are watching this can see me lock this to the rear. And you can actually see my eyeballs through the ejection ports. And so what that allows you to do is to have a truly ambidextrous weapons platform by just field stripping the gun, by then rotating the bolt 180 degrees. You then are able to change your ejection from right to left hand. Now, lefties will appreciate that, but righties of the world take note. All right, empty magazine, empty gun. You insert this, and your bolt locks back to the rear, or you feel something unusual. How do you typically troubleshoot that at an AR-15? You have to stop, take your head off the cheek, rotate, look down, and then if you have to take remedial action, you take your support hand, run it to the back of the weapon, rack, eject, do all that bullshit, and then friggin' because it's an AR-15, you have to smack a forward assist just to be safe. All right, so you just took your hand off fire control, you took your hand off of support, and you're just juggling a gun. To us, that's nuts. That's crazy. What happens is all you're doing is you use your non-dominant eye while you're still in cheek weld, and you can see down into the chamber and see what's going on. Oh, okay, I just had a double cheat. Strip, rack, insert the magazine, and away you go. And I kept my hand on fire control the entire time.
I think that's remarkable. I think.
Yep.
Thanks to the left.
Bob Faxon's a lefty.
There you go.
Yep. So
all right. Well, that's just an absolutely amazing piece of engineering.
Thank you, gentlemen. We appreciate that.
Well, I think that now that we've covered the AR-21, is the AR-31 essentially just the big brother? I mean, we're talking the 308 as a base round, but does the AR-31 leverage you into a different arena in any way? Is it still the same, heart and soul of the 21, but just larger? Or did you guys have to overcome any new engineering challenges with that new platform?
Generally speaking, the only engineering challenge that presents itself in a 308 is the pressure curve of the round. So a 308 actually maintains more pressure in the barrel longer than a 5.56. So what that means is the gun runs fast in a piston if you don't make the appropriate changes to the firearm to be able to slow it down. And we were able to make those. Can't really go into details about what exactly we did at this time, but rest assured that the gun runs nice and smooth, which is exactly how a 308 should feel. A good shove instead of a sharp snap was immensely critical to us when we designed it for the recoil impulse.
The AR-10 world is kind of notorious for a lot of players sticking to proprietary dimensions. Are you guys finding pretty broad-based interoperability with most of your lowers that you're designed for?
So you're right. The 308 world has significantly more receiver interfaces. Now the barrels and the bolt carriers and everything is really all consolidating around the DPMS style, or at least DPMS Gen 1. Who knows what this Gen 2 is going to do. But what we decided to do is we looked at the market and said, okay, where are there the most receivers? Because one of the ARAC's real claims to fame is that buy the upper receiver, get all of this great functionality, and keep your beloved AR lower receiver. No reason to change it, right? It works. Same design philosophy with the 308. So the ARAC-31 will be compatible with DPMS style lower receivers. So DPMS, Mega Arms, I'm sorry, not Mega Arms. SI Defense is DPMS compatible. Rainier Arms, the upcoming ADAC lower receiver are all DPMS pattern. Now, we will also be having our own lower receiver that we offer for it, and its real claim to fame will be everything on it will be truly ambidextrous. So you will have a magazine catch and release on both sides of the gun. You will have safety selector on both sides of the gun, and also a bolt catch and release on both sides of the gun. Unlike some of the designs out there now, which are just a release on the right-hand side, we said no. The gun must be truly ambi. You must be able to operate it from both sides of the gun, and we would not accept less.
All right. Well, so the 21's been out for how long now?
About 2.5 years now.
And where's the 31 right now?
The 31 is finishing development. It will be hopefully shipping here at the end of Q2 this year.
So is that something that you already have, like the big giant list of pre-orders, and it'll be a while before you catch up and see them anyplace? Or did you guys kind of jump the curve there, and you think you're going to be able to have these in wide distribution?
So we do not sell our rifles through distributors because our thinking is I want to be able to offer the best price for this technology to the user. Now, don't get me wrong, distributors are wonderful things inside the market, but they also add a markup to everything that goes out. And the ARAC is an expensive piece of kit because there's a lot of things that are precision machined on it. Matter of fact, everything in it is billet. And that takes time, that takes money. And so you do have a $1,200 upper receiver for a single barrel ARAC. The 31, we're able to, it's not as bad relative to the 308 market, and that's about a $1,400 to $1,500 single barrel upper receiver. But our general idea is when we first released the 31, as with many kind of new companies, we jumped the gun. We took a lot of orders, and it took us a while to catch up. With the 31, we're releasing details, we're having a pre-order list, and we're building on schedule. Or if we're going to exceed schedule, I have a list of people I can contact, say, hey, here's what's going on. I'm either adding a new feature or I want to make sure that this works for you 100%. We're not going to put guns into the field that we do not have the confidence ourselves, if you dropped us in Afghanistan, to work every day.
Now, JW is a big Scar Heavy fan. So tell me, on the ARAC 31, have you drawn any parallels, any comparisons, tried to see where you are with relationship to your competitors in actual, I don't know, field comparisons?
So just being able to go out and shoot it, yes, we have. I wouldn't put out the 31 if I didn't feel confident I could kick the Scar's ass.
There you go, JW.
Don't get me wrong, the Scar is a great weapon system, but it was designed around a core philosophy that SOCOM thought it needed at the time. And
Right.
Note that SOCOM has, while they've kept the Scar H because it's really one of the best 308 designs out there, because the AR-308 has its own issues. The Scar Light is no longer in service with SOCOM, generally speaking, because the concept, not to say that it's not a great weapon, but you have a reciprocating charging handle. So what ended up happening is operators went out there, and all of a sudden the reciprocating charging handle banged up against something, and it stopped the gun in its tracks. It went down simply because of a architecture design. The other component to it is the Scar, and I don't understand the reasoning, but the lower Picatinny rail mounts to the barrel. So what ends up happening is all the foregrips and everything that you put on the gun, in the same way that when we had the M16s, when you put pressure on the handguard, you deflected your barrel. And so what ended up happening is you had accuracy problems. Even though if you just rested on sandbags, the Scar would shoot a minute of angle or less. If you put a foregrip on it and tried to shoot 400 yards in a combat situation, your bullet's hit 36 inches to the right. It doesn't do you any good. The 31 has the same clamping barrel architecture. So the only way you're moving that barrel is if you can somehow move aluminum and steel all at the same time, which, way to go, Hercules. So, yeah.
Is there anything else we need to know about the ARACs there, the 21s and the 31s? I mean, it just sounds like you guys have come in and kind of cleaned house and kicked some tail and taken some names, really kind of reimagined what it is to have an upper receiver.
Well, thank you for the compliments. We appreciate them immensely, and that's been, a big driver to being able to do this daily, is to make sure we meet the needs of shooters out there. Here's what I'd say is we have set ourselves apart not just by having good technology. I care more about having great service to the customers. And if you ever have an issue with your ARAC or any other product we've manufactured, call us. We'll help you. And it's myself on the phone. It's my staff on the phone, working with people every day. And if you know any company with better customer service, do me a favor, send me an email, nathan@faxonfirearms.com. I want to know who, so I can call them up, study, and learn. Because we look at it as there's no better person to tell me what you want other than you. And being able to talk with you every day, or the customer base every day, is wonderful. I know, hey, you just told me what you want. Let me go build it. Or, you've told me what you want. I think I could solve this problem and this problem too, and let me go really innovate.
Well, it sounds like you guys are setting an example that's going to be leading the way. Let's kind of switch back to something that doesn't make me feel like I've made an inferior choice in firearms, and tell me about your AR barrels.
So we started making our barrels for the ARAC ourselves. One, we like to build things ourselves. We're notorious for that. Is if I can make it myself, I'm going to. I don't like buying it somewhere else. What we discovered is, with 35 years of deep hole CNC experience, everyone get your mind out of the gutter, we are really, really good at making barrels. And it was a natural extension of our machining knowledge to be able to figure out the dark art of barrel manufacturing. And so we now have, and we offer to the market what we consider the best value for an AR barrel out there, period. We're not cold hammer forged, and I don't want to be. I know everyone's, I don't want to be for technical reasons, which I'd be happy to explain. But what I want to be able to do is to provide a minute of angle or better barrel for the best price I possibly can. And that's exactly what our barrel lineup is set to do. So we only use 4150 chromoly steel. We only use 416R stainless. We only do QPQ black nitride because we will not accept less than the best to be able to provide the best barrel we can.
So I understand that your barrels are getting a lot of press, and people are really very happy with what they're able to do. How much of that is that dark art you've learned versus the things that you've learned how to do in providing top-notch precision machining? I mean, how much of it is gunsmithing and how much of it is what you've been doing for 35 years?
I'd say it's a little bit of both. When you start with anything, you learn new things as you go, but we had a great head start with the machining side. And so combined with some guys at the company who are true gun guys and others who are true machinists, we were able to figure it out very quickly. And now when you combine that understanding of fundamentally what you're building with an AS9100, aerospace quality level system, it's very easy to consistently produce good product. Because at every step, I know what I'm doing, I know what I did, I measured it to prove it, I have the documentation behind it before it goes on to the next step. And so I can tell you for every single barrel batch that's rolling down the production line, what it was like, when it was like it, did we pass it, yes or no, and if we didn't, why? Now those barrels never get into the marketplace. We'll melt them down. They won't be used for anything. And trust me, they're very rare. But if somebody calls up and says, hey, I had an issue with a barrel, which rarely happens, is I know exactly where to go look and how to fix it, what happened, what is somebody likely seeing, and be able to be the best service to them we possibly can.
So at this point, when you talk about being kind of the best value in the market, what kind of volume are you able to produce out there?
That I'll keep close to the chest, but what I will say is that it's growing daily. We actually have quite a few OEMs in the market that we produce barrels for as well. Matter of fact, I would basically tell any AR person who's gone out and shot a machine gun in their lifetime, or who has shot ARs from a lot of other people, you've probably shot one of our barrels at some point, and you've said, hey, this is the greatest thing ever. Well, it's got somebody else's name on it, but trust me, we made it.
All right.
For us, it's now taking that same reputation and same machining and being able to put it under our own name because we are truly proud of it.
So it's not like you just stepped into the arena and you're growing your capabilities. Your capacity's been there for a while.
It has. We've been doing, again, a lot of OEM work, and where I'm now working to pick up capacity is on the retail side. Is we have certain barrel SKUs that have picked up phenomenal reputation very quickly. And barrels are a wonderful thing, but they take 4 weeks to manufacture. So trying to predict demand 4 weeks in advance is a fun activity, and we enjoy it. But we're sometimes often wrong, and for some reason it keeps growing. So, challenges, right?
Well, that's the kind of challenge you like to have, right?
Very much so.
Well, so in your barrel lineup, are you guys sticking strictly with the AR side, or do you have any offerings in the AR-10 side?
So we also have 308 barrels that we're manufacturing currently. 6.5 Creedmoor will be coming out not too far from now. We've got them manufactured, and they're going to be going through our accuracy testing to make sure they meet ours and what the market would demand and expect from the caliber. We have lots of other options that we do for other OEMs, including bolt actions, handgun, really a plethora. We basically do any kind of barrel, all the way down to pocket pistol 22 long rifle. So.
Well, you keep giving us clues like that, we'll figure out one way or the other who you're making barrels for.
Hey, there's a lot of people making pocket pistol 22s.
What do you have in the AR-15 as far as caliber offerings? Is it the standard 5.56 300 blackout, or do you have anything further afield than those two?
So for the AR-15, we manufacture 9mm 7.62x39, 300 blackout, 45, of course 223 5.56, and 40 Smith & Wesson for various iterations of ARs and other OEMs. So we have a pretty good selection, and pretty soon we'll have 6.5 Grendel up and running. Again, part of the ARAC is expanding that across the line. And I'm really hoping we're going to have some other big bore stuff coming out. 458 SOCOM, 545x39, and continue to have great options for our customer base.
Well, that sounds amazing. Are you going to put that 545x39 in the ARAC 21 at some point?
Of course. Can't tell you when, because again, we talked about that design and engineering of the bolt, but we're definitely going to.
All right. I think the last thing that we want to talk about is the muzzlelock system. This looks like a pretty interesting innovation in, I guess, essentially attaching any kind of a muzzle device to your rifle. Can you describe for me a little bit about what makes it unique?
Sure. So muzzlelock is fundamentally a muzzle device that does not require a crush washer, but can still be timed. So for those who are running like an AAC 3-prong, it doesn't matter for timing on that kind of flash hider. But when you start talking about muzzle brakes and very interesting technologies out there, you want to be able to time it. So for us, it's a really cool piece of tech, especially for those who use direct thread-on suppressors. So normally people will own, because it's such a pain in the ass, which we disagree with, is they'll only own 1 or 2 cans, and they'll direct thread it onto a couple of rifles, you'll move it around, etc. Well, what happens to the rifle when you don't have a can on it? Or you take both your rifles out and you want to shoot the other. How do you protect that? So for us, Muzzlock is a solution to that problem, and of course an innovation in and of itself. So hopefully you guys can see this here. This is what we call our small block, which basically it is a V8 engine block muzzle device. And this is truly a brake and compensator. By the way, really fun to shoot at night because you have a V friggin' going out of light show in front of you. But you can also see here that it's 2 parts. You've got the base muzzle device and the locking collar. So this locking collar stays attached to the muzzle device itself. What ends up happening is you thread this on to your barrel like you normally would. And then once you've timed it, you rotate this the opposite direction till it bites the barrel, and then you cinch the entire assembly down. So you basically have a crush washer, which is opposing threads working with one another, attached to a muzzle device. So you can time it if you want it to be perfectly to the 12 o'clock. Great. If you don't, change it. It allows you to have the option of a thread protector. We start talking about suppressors, or just being able to consistently change the muzzle device on your firearm without having to go through the rigmarole.
Right. So is there any fear of the muzzle device loosening up? Do you need a tool, a strap wrench, a special device, or can you literally hand cinch it and keep it in place?
So muzzle devices are 10 to 30 pounds of torque. I think it's the actual spec. I'm sorry, I don't know off the top of my head. But you can get 10 pounds of torque using just your hand. Now, we will recommend you take a tool and you give it a little bit of an extra cinch. But with any of, say, the true muzzle devices, a pen or a cleaning rod through it, quick cinch, and you're off and running. But yes, you can use it with just your hand and it will be functional. Now,
all right. Well, that sounds like a very interesting innovation as well. I don't think I've seen that anywhere out in the market.
Okay.
So I think the last thing that I wanted to touch on, which you didn't actually bring to our attention, you've got some pretty interesting marker bands that you sell so that people can make sure that they're keeping their firearms in proper relationship to the caliber that they're firing. Can you tell me what prompted you to make your...
we covered why we did it.
you talked about why you have the distinction between 5.56 and 300 blackout. Is this something that some people kind of came up to you, or this was with direct experience you decided, it would probably be better to keep things clear?
Direct experience is a good way of phrasing it.
I know I load all my 300 blackout into Dark Earth magazines, and I specifically keep them only in those mags, but this seems like a good alternative.
So yeah, it will allow you to, of course, change between different... All right, long story short, we blew up 2 guns on ourselves, as we talked about earlier. One was Bob Faxon, one was Ryan Faxon, and of course it'll scare the living bejesus out of you, but the gun's going to keep you safe. And so we figured, God, there's got to be a better way to do this. And the marker band was the solution. I'm sorry I don't have one on me, which is killing me right now to say that. But basically they're brightly colored rubber bands that you can put around the bottom of your magazine. On one side it'll have 5.56, for example, the blue bands. 5.56, 223, and on the other we leave blank. So if you are a person who, say, hand loads and you want to have multiple different magazines, you can put that one, 77 grain OTM, something along those lines.
Nice. But
we do bright and distinct separate colors for each caliber. 5.56 is blue, 300 blackout is red, 7.62 by 3.9 is yellow. And so the general idea is, say, you have your completed firearm here, especially one like ours, which is multiple caliber. and you swapped calibers recently, you can't remember what you put in there, and you missed the rings that we talk about, so we need to go on to the next level of stupidity. There are many levels. So you have a marker band on the bottom of your magazine, but you also put it, and think about it, on your firearm itself. So you know when I insert the magazine, aha, blue on blue, I'm good to go. Red on red, I'm good to go. Oh, shit. Pardon my French. Red on yellow. Uh-oh, I probably shouldn't pull the trigger. So that's the idea, is to be able to help people keep from blowing themselves up.
Great.
Well, that sounds like an amazing innovation there. I really kind of like that idea. Tell me, have we covered everything in your line? I mean, I think the only thing that we didn't really talk about is the XRS complete rifle systems, but you touched on those when you talked about the complete ambidextrous nature of your lowers. It sounds like you guys have really kind of, in a very short amount of time, from 2012 to today, come on strong with just an amazing selection of choices and innovations and products for the market.
Thank you.
I'm eager to see what the next couple of years brings out.
Now,
Well,
where are
you.
most people picking these up from? Do you have dealers all over the place, or I know people can just ship uppers straight to their door. Are they ordering them direct from your site or from different dealers?
So we have an established and growing dealer network. By the way, if you're a dealer out there, please contact us. I'd love to have you. Sorry, shameless sales plug every once in a while.
That's all right.
We have an established dealer network where people are able to offer the barrels, the ARACs, etc. And we also offer them direct from us. So a lot of times the dealers will have certain stock configurations, but if you want to put together something custom, or we now offer 3 barrel kits, you can go ahead and have us build that directly for you and ship straight to your home.
Now, you had mentioned your desire to kind of control the price and make sure that there aren't any middlemen in there. Are the dealers going to be selling your components at the same price as you would? Is there going to be some advantage going one way versus another? Or is it just a matter of convenience at this point?
So we try to give our dealers extra margin so that they're able to sell stock components themselves. Typically, though, if you want something custom, they'll contact us directly, and we just have all the parts in stock. It makes it a little bit easier, etc. So, but no, dealer should be able to beat any price directly from us, and we try to cultivate our dealer network because we love them and we wouldn't be here without them.
Aw.
Well, I tell you what, I think
it's the truth.
I think we've pretty much touched on everything that I can find to wring out of you at this point. Tell me, is there anything else that you want to share with us about Faxon Firearms, or have we pretty much covered everything out there?
I just say, if you have a brilliant idea and you want to share it with us, I'm all ears. Some of our best ideas have actually come from a customer saying, hey, I have this problem. And we've been able to work on a solution. So I hope there are lots of other people who have problems out there who want to work with us. Until then, we're going to try and be the best company out there we possibly can be. Great service, a great product, and we hope people, and we thank the people who put their trust in us, and we're going to do our darndest to live up to it.
I got to tell you, at this point, it sounds to me like everything our listeners has ever said about you guys is coming to pass. Nathan, thanks for joining us tonight. It's been a real pleasure, a real honor, and I am suitably impressed.
Well, thank you, Reed. We appreciate all the compliments, and we're going to work every day to make sure that we live up to everything I just said.
Well, so at this point, we usually tell our guests that if they've got better things to do than hang out with us, they are free to leave. But, we've got a little bit of feedback and a couple of things to go through, and you are welcome to stay with us and participate all you want. But the choice is yours.
If there were any questions and answers, I'd be happy to help answer them. If not, I thank you guys immensely for your time this evening because we've got guns to build tomorrow.
Well,
No problem.
we
We really
avoid
appreciate
the
your time.
dilemma. Oh yeah, we avoid the dilemma of the forums by making sure that we don't let anybody participate on a live basis.
Well, it sounds like a brilliant solution. Well,
Yeah,
thank you,
nothing like
gentlemen, very much
excellent.
for your time and your.
You're very welcome.
Gentlemen, great evening to you.
All right.
All right.
You too
Talk
as
to you
well,
again
Nathan.
later.
Thank you.
Cool. We have a message here from Hunter, who is our second giveaway winner. Word is that Hunter now has his rifle. And what'd you send along to him?
Well, it was the magazines that he wanted, or not wanted, that he won. So he's got his magazines on the way and the documentation that came with the rifle that we built for him. So we're hoping that that will all be very well received.
Yeah, I'm still waiting for photos. I want to see some.
Well, he sent one. I'll have to let you see that as soon as we find it.
Yeah, throw it up on the Facebook.
Let's see. A little feedback. So it looks like Josh, one of our listeners, was out in the snow taking a moment to share his knowledge and wisdom with the beginning shooter. Josh, thanks for sharing.
Oh, yeah.
We've got a picture of his beginning shooter. I think that we've been introduced to this beginning shooter, have we not, JW?
Yeah, I think, because in this photo she's rocking the tactical yoga pants. I think she was in a tactical bikini the other time that Josh actually stopped by the show. So appreciate sharing your friends, and I guess we'll be seeing them in the future.
Absolutely. We need to get Josh on. Are we going to do a 308 show and have some of the guys from up in PA on?
Yeah, I'm sure we can find a topic to get him back on. I know he was just doing some welding with an FFL tonight, converting an old machine gun into something that is legal nowadays. So.
Are you serious?
Yeah. Oh yeah, he's an animal.
Well, amazing. All right. Well, let's see. TL wrote in two parts. He says, I was listening to This Week in Guns, and it was mentioned that there is current ammo on the market that is more armor-piercing than green tip. Could you give some examples? Thank you. So I asked him to clarify his question. He says, sorry, I should clarify. I realize that most rifle ammo should penetrate level 3A armor, but do you know of any AR-15 ammo that results in more penetration than green tip? I have an answer, but JW, what does your experience tell you?
Not really something that I've looked for, so I don't really have any education on the topic, and I guess I'm not really in a position to be dispensing advice on how to defeat body armor. So I'm going to steer clear of that one.
I don't know that it's anything that we have to worry about because I don't know that you can actually find any of it, but there is an M, I believe it's 995, 5.56 projectile that has a tungsten core. So
Well,
I think
that'd probably do it.
Yeah, I think technically speaking that is armor piercing.
I was running some 50 BMG of a
Yeah.
buddy's on Saturday night. He has a M82, and he brought his own plates, so don't worry about the steel owner. And he had a bunch of API, which is armor piercing incendiary. And I put a video up. I'll have to post it over on the podcast page. But
I'd love
it
to see
was obviously the blast off the gun was pretty impressive. You could sometimes see a little bit of a trail heading downrange, and then there was this bright flash as soon as it hit the plate. So I used the slow-mo on the cell phone and threw a video up. So I'll share it with you guys, and that was pretty impressive.
Now, I have to tell you, JW, there's nothing like being on the firing line when an entire Marine infantry company unloads its entire arsenal in a frenzied fire demonstration.
Yeah, I can only imagine that the show that's put on at Knob Creek could probably rival something like that.
I don't know. They use a lot of tracers in those demonstrations, and we, of course, get to play with the Mark 19. So, but it's probably very close. Yeah, the downside of a Mark 19 is that's a lot of $200 tax stamps every time one goes thump.
Yeah. It might almost be cheaper to dedicate, 4, 6, 8 years of your life to be able to pull that trigger. All right, Woody here says, I was curious if you handle setting up gun trusts. I imagine he's asking Reed, hey, what's the difference between a normal, quote, trust and a, quote, gun trust? What do you think of Silencer Co.'s gun trust? Can non-Class 3 guns be purchased in a trust? If so, would it help anything? Paperwork, background check, etc.
All right, so I'm going to just be real simple on the first parts of these. I do have a gun trust that I drafted and that I sell as a service to my clients. The difference between a normal trust and a gun trust, when we talk about a gun trust, we're talking about something that's an NFA trust. And when we talk about a normal trust, we're talking about a creature of state law that is an estate planning tool. And the estate planning tool has things in it like provisions about how your trustee can invest your money so that he's a prudent investor. It has things in there like what he can invest in so that he doesn't incur any wasting of trust assets. Well, these are kind of contrary to what you would find in an NFA trust, because if you have a suppressor, every time you use the suppressor, you're wasting, quote unquote, that suppressor because you're adding an element of deterioration and wear to it. So those are not harmonious provisions. The same with diversification. Well, if all you have is silencers, well, you're not very well diversified. You're not a prudent investor.
Well, that's why you got to get machine guns and short barrel rifles.
Exactly. The whole idea being that the NFA trust is going to just scale back all of those estate planning issues and bring in, I guess, the overarching idea that what we're dealing with is a completely different beast. The principle, the core, is still the same. It's the idea that you have nominal title held in the name of an individual who is appointed by a trustor, a settlor, to act as trustee and hold that item in accordance with the provisions of the trust. So, yes, there is a difference. There is always going to be a distinction between a properly drafted NFA trust and any state law estate planning vehicle that is a trust. So he says, what do you think of Silencer Co.'s gun trust? You know, I can't offer an opinion. I haven't seen one. I haven't read it. I don't know what it is. That being said, we have 50 states in the Union, 50 places where states have made laws with regard to what trusts can do. If Silencer Co., and they're an absolutely great advocate for the firearms industry and for silencers being more readily available to consumers. They're an absolutely wonderful advocate. If they have developed a trust with the help of good counsel that is capable of surmounting the drafting issues inherent in a one-size-fits-50 states vehicle, then hats off to them. I mean, absolutely. I think that that's a great idea. I hate to say it and have you think that it is driven because of my profession. It's not. I think that if you're going to buy a Silencer Co. Gun Trust, you need to have it reviewed by someone familiar with your state's laws. Because what you want is something that isn't going to fail you if it's going to get a higher degree of scrutiny for some reason.
Yeah, we're talking about some pretty high stakes here.
So, on that basis, I would say that if you get an okay from your local lawyer, you're doing great. But it's a buyer beware thing. And you have to remember that you're not hiring Silencer Co. to be your lawyer. They can't be. And they'll tell you that they can't be. So you don't have representation when you buy their trust. So I think you need to be a good informed consumer and take the extra step. Now, we're going to see this over time. It's going to come out. People are going to talk about this. We're going to get some feedback and some understanding of what they're doing. And I applaud them for the effort, because really it's something that if they can make it that easy, they're opening the doors to a huge, huge market and allowing you, the listener, that much more access in doing so. So that's what I have to say about Silencer Co.'s Gun Trust. Now, as far as can non-Class 3 guns be purchased in a trust, well, yes. And it won't help with anything, and in fact, I think it kind of muddies the waters. So I would say don't do it. Just like, your grandfather and your father and everybody before, just buy it in your name. If it's not Class 3, Title II firearm, you have no worries. Go out there, use it. It'll be passed in accordance with your wishes when the time comes, without having to be in an NFA trust. JW, you have any thoughts?
No, I mean, that sounds good to me.
Well, I think we had a light feedback show, but I want to tell you that we have coming up some opportunities provided by Otis Tech and their wonderful firearms cleaning kits to give you some giveaways and let you guys walk away with some new cleaning kits and an opportunity to get hands-on some of their new products. So I would like you to give us some feedback, because that's how we pick our winners. It's all of you guys that write in. So just a warning for next week's show. So JW, do you mind starting our outro and leading us out?
No, let's do it. Send some of that feedback for your handy giveaway entries to feedback@ar15podcast.com. If you visit the website, you can also leave us a recorded voicemail that we will try and play over the air, and those are really cool, so give that a try. Subscribe and listen to us for free over at iTunes or Stitcher, and you could leave us a review over there too. That's going to place the show higher when people are looking for shows like us, and hopefully let new listeners know about the show. I know we get feedback all the time. People say, hey, just found your show, and I listened to 100 some odd episodes, and I'm sure that's overwhelming, but we really appreciate it. Thank you. And hosting all those back shows, it does cost bandwidth, and so we try and keep them all up so that they are maintained as a resource for everybody. So leave some feedback there, and other people can find the show. If you've got pictures you're putting up on Instagram, we are at AR15podcast. Tag your pictures with a hashtag, just hashtag AR15podcast, and we'll be able to see those, and we'll throw them up in the show notes from time to time. Follow us on Google Plus at plus.google.com/+AR15podcast, and check us out on YouTube, youtube.com/C/AR15podcast. If you follow us on Facebook, just search for us, and we're posting throughout the week just things that we find interesting, photos and feedback from listeners. We've got some really great listeners that have been active on Facebook, so really appreciate all that. If you are looking for anything else, the Firearms Radio Network probably has something that would interest you. So check out firearmsradio.tv and the list of shows that is there, because it's pretty impressive how many shows and how many really dedicated hosts there are on the network here. Don't forget to use our Brownells affiliate link for AR or other firearms parts at ar15podcast.com/parts. And for everything else, visit Amazon at firearmsradio.tv/Amazon.
Well, all right. Sorry about that hasty departure. Apparently, big cup of coffee and a Red Bull.
Oh, come on. We don't want to hear about that, Reed.
I have the bladder of a 12-year-old, sorry. Okay. Well, listeners, we have a lot more awesome shows coming up. We are really kind of trying to swing for the fences and keep hitting the ball out of the park when we get these new and really kind of exciting guests on the show. But, you know, we do want to know from you if there's anybody that you'd like to get on the show, because we really do listen and we really do try to get them on for you. So I guess with that, everybody have a great week, and we will see you again when our next episode begins 7 days from now. JW, have a good night. All right. Bye.
This has been a production of the Firearms Radio Network. You can find more information at firearmsradio.tv.